Good morning. My name is Summer, and this is Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats. And I wanted to talk about, I'm just going to say pages because I haven't completed a third chapter. So, pages 19 through 64 of The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. I wasn't going to do a video so soon, but so much happened that just so much happened in the second chapter. I learned so much about Hans that I I didn't know, and I had made assumptions, and and now I feel kind of bad about them to a certain degree. And sorry, it's early morning. I am congested, so you'll hear me clearing my throat quite a bit, I'm sure. Also, I've been changing my sleeping habits, which has been affecting my reading. Before I would stay up until like 1 a.m. reading, and now I'm trying to get to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock, which means I just lay there with my eyes closed, and my mind has just been in a million different stressful directions. So I've just been saying, your mind is your friend, all is well, all is well. And I fall asleep. So hopefully my body will get used to it. So that way I can get up earlier. With the time change, I really like to be up when it's light, bed when it's dark. So, excuse me, but we will see how it goes. So anyway, this second chapter, I I loved it. There was so much information. So we find out that we find out about his parents. Sorry. His mother died when he was 5, and it was sudden, which my dad died very suddenly. We were just talking, and then an hour later, my mom was yelling for me. He had just dropped and had a heart attack. So, and that was that. So the idea of losing a parent at 5 years old suddenly, because it says she had just been laughing sitting up in bed, and it looked as though she had fallen back in laughter, but it was because she had died. I just can't imagine uh, what that would do to a child. And then, like I said, I was 37 when my dad died, and my mom just, it was devastating for all of us, but I think you expect your person, your partner, to be there with you for a lot longer, for those twilight later years. And so I saw what she went through, and honestly, it took that was 4 years ago, and it took about till last year for her to finally start waking back up to life, if that makes any sense. So to hear about how the death affected him, of course, I could feel that. So then he goes and is sent to his grandfather. I love his grandfather. I think it said he only got 7 or 18 months with his grandfather before his grandfather died. And so it got me thinking about the situation that he's in right now, where he's going to this mountain. Tuberculosis is apparently something that a lot of people have, and more common, I guess, of an ailment. But to have 2 men in your life die when you're so young, and both of lung ailments, I couldn't imagine then having issues and having that fear of, am I going to go that way too? Am I going to die that way also? Plus, it doesn't go into too much detail of him having to watch what his father and grandfather went through, how bad it was to watch them have these lung ailments. So another thing I really like that Thomas Mann does, instead of saying gray, he'll say depressing weather color. And I'm guessing a depressing weather color is a gray. And he does that later on where he'll say gay colored, which makes me think of like a yellow. I mean, let me know if I'm wrong, but gay colored, I feel like that's a bright, happy um, yellow. So, about his grandfather. So I just loved his grandfather so much, and I felt like he got so much love and attention from his grandfather. Now I know it said that he was a serious man, but it also says that he would follow him into his office sometimes, or den, or library, or whatever room it was. Also, it said here when he was eating dinner and he was observing his grandfather, he said, then he would look at his own hands and their still clumsy movements and see in them the hope foreshadowed. Sorry, and see in them the hope foreshadowed of one day holding and using his knife and fork as his grandfather did. So that says a lot too. Plus, when he would take him in there and take out the baptismal bowl and plate, and um, which was dated this 1650, which I just thought that was so neat. And I felt like telling someone their heritage and showing them their family line is such of a great way to say you belong. You know, you are a part of this. This is your blood, your family line. And I just felt that was such of an important thing that his grandfather would do for him. So that made me feel like he was a very loving man, even though it said he was like stern and serious. Also, and here's about when he was showing him the plate or bowl. It said, the great, 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 great. What a hollow sound it had. How it spoke of the falling away of time, yet how it seemed the expression of a piously cherished link between the present, his own life, and the depth of the past. And I love that line. There's so many beautiful lines in this book. It's wonderful. Um, plus that he took the time. He took the time to show his grandson that. And here I like this also. As a young man, he was aware that the image of his grandfather was more deeply and clearly imprinted on his mind, with greater significance than those of his own parents. The fact might rest upon sympathy and physical likeness, for the grandson resembled the grandfather. Let's see here. um, Another thing, so this is the whole kind of like how I was feeling like he was raised with money and entitlement in a sense, because it says when his grandfather died, um, it said the sight was no longer strange. It was already right familiar, and as on those earlier occasions, only in still greater degree, he bore himself in the presence of death with a responsible air, quite self-controlled, showing no nervous weakness. And then also it says, or else with childlike indifference, was instinctively confident that he would be taken care of somehow. I'm not sure how many kids would feel that way after losing both of their parents, and then losing the grandfather, to just be like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't lose my parents or grandparents at a young age, so Um, and then it talks about him looking at his grandfather when he was laying there dead. Also, another thing, Thomas Mann has a way of saying things in a weird way. Like he's talking about when his grandfather is lying there, and I'm thinking, what is he trying to tell me? And I guess he's trying to say that there was a certain smell, because he just goes on and on about this familiar, faint yet oddly clinging. He blushed to find that it made him think of a former schoolfellow who was avoided by his classmates because he suffered from a certain unpleasant affection. And so I'm guessing it was a smell, but it was a strange way of putting it. Okay, so when it says the change was no loss to him, talking about his grandfather, the change was no loss to him, I do not believe that. Thomas Mann, I don't believe it. Because for him to have the relationship that he did with his grandfather, he had a man who looked like him. He had a man who took time, who told him, this is what your family is. I mean, he took the time for his grandson. And then to say the change was no loss to him. I don't believe that. I don't believe he slid into his uncle's home and did not feel that loss of his grandfather. Um, Also, the woman, uh, Shalene, I'm not sure, the maid or house, whatever, servant, um, Shalene, I'm guessing that was her name, but I thought it was, all the food, how he describes the food. And also he says tomato ketchup. I just thought that was cute because, I mean, it does say tomato ketchup on the bottle, I believe, but none of us say tomato ketchup. Also, that she took the place of a mother to little Hans. But it doesn't say much about her. For someone to take place of a mother, she sure doesn't get mentioned that much, at least so far. Also, this line, so he grew up in wretched weather, in the teeth of wind and mist, grew up, so to say, in a yellow mackintosh, and generally speaking, he throve. What a great line. Great line. Also, I thought this was very interesting. Okay, so it says a rough spot on the cuff of his dainty colored shirts filled him with acute discomfort. Hey, Sosa. That makes me think about things. So many things happen in your life that you cannot control. He could control his clothing, and so for him to get a spot on the cuff says to me that since he had so much that he couldn't control, he was maybe a little bit of a control freak when it came to the things he could control in his life. But I don't know. Oh, let's see here. Oh, it's so funny too, where he goes on about um, trying to decide what he really wanted to do, and going back and forth and really not doing anything. But he made sure he did not want and he did not want for a career of being eccentric and not getting enough to eat. So he already is thinking he wants to make money. That's why he wants to work. Um, yeah, and his uncle is telling him that, and if you want to be somebody here in this town and live as you have been brought up to, you'll have to earn a good bit more to put with it. You mark my words, my son. So he's already being told, you need to make the money. But here again, I thought it was funny that uh, it's like he regards working as a religion, and it was the principle by which one stood or fell, the absolute of the time it was, so to speak, in its own justification. His regard for it was thus religious in its character, in so far as he knew unquestioningly. But it was another matter whether he loved it, and that he could not do, however great his regard. The simple reason being that it did not agree with him. Working did not agree with him. I mean, how many people? I started working when I was 15. I went and I got a worker's permit and I started working at a nursing home. So that really created my character of who I am today. So, yeah, I thought that was, and here again, it's talking about how his likeness, people, it's unmistakable who he is because he looks just like his grandfather. And they're finally starting to tell us what Hans looks like. So down at the page of 35, it says, in his blue eyes, under the reddish brown brows, his fellow citizens read no answer to their curious questioning, and he probably knew none himself. Hans, the still unwritten page. I love that. Still unwritten page. Oh, we find out he's 23 years old. And also he's not. Now, see, here's where I'm like really confused. And I think Mayfair is going to do a wild jumping. She's going to wildly jump up. No, she's just going to settle in. Okay, that's good. Um, so Joachim was ill, not ill like Hans, but in all seriousness, critically. There had been a great scare, in fact, where he had started coughing up blood. So I'm like, oh, so Hans isn't ill, even though he is anemic, which my mother used to donate blood all the time. And every time she would be borderline anemic. And the doctor's like, you really shouldn't donate blood. But my mom's like, I want to help. So, yeah. But she would just be like eating raisins and, high iron foods. And that would help her because she was just borderline. One thing. Oh, there's Mayfair. One thing, and once I started thinking about it, I was like, of course, silly. They're always talking about gardens. Every single place, every home, everywhere he goes, he's talking about a garden. But you have to think I'm guessing this is 1800s, maybe it's early 19. But everyone had a garden. I mean, they used to have victory gardens, where people didn't have to work on, or banks closed on Thursdays so that you could go work in your garden. So sure, of course there's going to be gardens mentioned because that was something that everybody probably did and had, and it was probably very common. There probably was a garden every single place, which is kind of sad that we don't have that so much today. I mean, like I planted some tomatoes and peppers and onions, but and butterfly bushes and stuff, but not really anything that you could say, oh, wow, look. Okay, so now he is in his room and the neighbors are busy. And the walls are very thin and he is so and I guess he's like embarrassed and he seems a little outraged that this is going on. One sentence that I had to laugh because of course it's embarrassing, but it's just something that's, human that people do. But it says in broad daylight, it's a bit thick. And last night too, I'm sure. That he did it in the day and last night. Oh, That just cracked me up so bad. And it's funny that he's like, I do not want to know those people. I do not want to be introduced to those people. And those people don't think, I'm sure they don't think anything about it. It's funny about the cigars, and now that the cigar is losing taste, and uh, you know, that type of thing. Let's see. Oh, and it's funny. It says he was far too sure of himself and his station in life to alter his ways and acquire new ones for a mere 3 weeks visit. Also, okay, has anybody else noticed sevens? So there's 7 years. There's on the baptismal plate, there is 7 names, 7 family names. In the dining area, there's 7 tables. There's something else that's 7. Sorry, I remember there's another 7. I think it was, I bet it's at the very end of where I was reading. Oh, yeah. How long does that go on? He said, and Joachim raised 7 fingers. 7 minutes, but they must be up. So it's talking about time again. But I noticed like 777. Also, yeah, here's where it says gay colored. They were stenciled in gay colored bands. So I think yellow. Let me know if you think of it's a different color. Also, there's that Fra store inquired after her condition and heard with proper solicitude that it was unsatisfactory. She complained of relaxation. I feel so relaxed. Guessing that's a laudanum? Could be all that free-flowing champagne. Also, Hans is an emotional mess, it seems like. And I'm guessing it could be altitude. It could be that he is in the situation that he's in where he is surrounded by people who are sick, could be dying. He is there, and I don't think we've really fully heard about his illness. I feel like there's underlying things that we just don't know about yet. But he seems to keep saying he's just anemic. That's it. There's no other. But being pale could also be that you're not getting enough oxygen, I would think. But I don't know. Because here it says Hans gave a sudden angry start. A door was slammed. It was the one on the left leading into the hall, and someone had let it fall shut or even banged it, a thing he detested. He had never been able to endure it. And it's like, just settle down. Because he says, and someone had let it fall shut or even banged it. So he's saying it's not really somebody's fault. I mean, somebody didn't angrily storm out. They let it fall shut. That's not an aggressive, that's not something to be upset about, or even banged it. Maybe someone found out they're dying. For him to get so bent out of shape over that, like he just can't tolerate. I just felt like, okay, there you go. There shows your entitlement again of you want things the way you want them. That's something you can't control, so you're having issues with it. And here where he's talking to this guy, and he says, I dare say, but the truth is you are a civilian, incurable. But then you are healthy. You can do what you like, he added, and his eyes took on their tired look. Yes, healthy except for the anemia. I was like, are you healthy? Oh, and something, okay, like these strong words again. It says, And it can't do me any harm. Suppose I do put on a little flesh then, in God's name, though it sounds a bit disgusting, you will admit. It sounds disgusting to put on some weight. To I'm not sure why the strong word, and this is translated, so maybe it wasn't such of a strong word, but also he's talking about these ladies, which was so interesting. I had never heard about um, having one of your lungs, the ill lung, be treated and shut down and just keeping your other healthy lung working so to give this lung time to heal. Which is interesting, but it also makes me think if you're not using it, are you helping it? Because using it, the blood is flowing, you know what I mean? So it kind of made me nervous, the idea of shutting a lung down. But I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how things really work. But one of the ladies, and the lady who whistled at him, and he he had a strong reaction to that. But he said one was the other shorter and plump, disfigured by freckles, which I'm a sucker for freckles. I always think that's an attractive feature on people. I always wanted freckles when I was a kid. Um, anyway, but then he talks about the woman who whistled. Somehow she can whistle through her lung. I, I don't know how that exactly works, but they fill them full of gas. She nearly touched him with her arm, and he about had a conniption. He just, which I have to remember, this is the 1800s, maybe early 1900s. I don't believe a date has been mentioned. So anyway, yeah. And sometimes I feel like he says things that are kind of could be considered hurtful since he is healthy. Um, but yeah, it was so interesting when they were talking about the lungs and how it works, how they fill it up with gas, and so on. But it says, then it was that Hans laughed. His excitement while Joachim was speaking had fixed for its outlet upon laughter rather than tears, and he laughed as he walked, his hands over his eyes, his shoulders bent, shaking. So he told him, but I remember, I guess I didn't mark it, but he had said, "Well, you should do that. They should do that to you." It's kind of like that's kind of a mean thing to say to somebody. Nobody wants to have this. I'm sure nobody wants to have that done. I'm sure it is not a nice a nice thing to have done to your body. But anyway. And yeah, I think part of the not being able to taste the cigars, it could be a symptom of the altitude. That's what I'm guessing, more so than anything else. Um, also, so Hans has a walking stick, and I didn't know if it was the style, if it was for style, or if he needed it. I'm not for sure about that. Um, oh, and talking about that girl who, the priest came in and she was kicking and begging and screaming. She didn't, and she was young, and just the idea of that just made me feel horrible, to hear about her going through that, the kicking and screaming and just hiding underneath the sheet. Um, Also, I thought it was very interesting where Hans got really upset when a doctor told a patient, don't behave like that. And he said, I say, that's pretty steep, he cried. Goes at him like that and simply tells him not to behave that way to a dying man. But after all, a dying man has something in a way sacred about him. One can't just perfectly coolly like that. A dying man is sort of holy, don't I should think. So yeah, and here again he says, I insist that a dying man is above any chap that is going about and laughing and earning his living and eating his 3 meals a day. It isn't good enough, his voice quavered. It isn't good enough for one to calmly, just calmly, his words trailed off in a fit of laughter that seized and overcame him, the laughter of yesterday. And laughter, I think that's just everything catching up with him. It could be altitude also, but I think it's also like emotionally everything just catching up with him. The realization, his taking in his surroundings, seeing everything that's going on, the deaths that he had of his mother and his father and his grandfather. Um, like I said, his father and grandfather both had lung ailments, so I'm not for sure what he saw um, in that. Also, something that was really interesting. Now you're talking about like Odysseus in the Kingdom of the Shades. And then this guy, this Italian man, Sedembrini, maybe. He was interesting. Interesting character for sure. But I thought it was interesting where he said, descend. I protest. Here I have climbed up some 5,000 feet to get here. And that was only seeming, upon my honor. It was an illusion, the Italian said, with a decisive wave of his hands. And I thought that was so interesting that he's, you descended up here. It was an illusion that you went up. You have descended down. I thought that was really interesting way to look at it. Here he is talking about his health again. And if one isn't the strongest in the world, it is true that I am here only on a visit, but I am not very robust, and I cannot with truth assert that my work agrees with me so wonderfully well. It would be a great deal truer to say that it rather takes it out on me. I only feel really fit when I am doing nothing at all, which there again about his work. But yeah, if he can't really do any much, then how well is his health? Also, when they were talking about the doctors, about how the doctors were fighting with each other, and then he was talking about this one doctor. He said this doctor Salzman. Patients were encouraged to drink so much of the fruit of the vine for the benefit of Dr. Salzman's pocketbook that they died off like flies, not of, I don't know how to pronounce that word, but cirrhosis of the liver. So, very interesting. Here they are at the end of page 64 talking about time again. Yeah, so I'm already half an hour in talking about this. The Magic Mountain, Thomas Mann. I'm hoping to get to page, like I said, what was that, 64? Yeah, page 60. I'm on page 64. I'm hoping to get to page 87 at least tonight so that I can go watch Matthew at Mayberry Book Club's video, because I had started it and he said, I'm on page 87. I was like, oh, pause. Let me wait till I get there before I watch it. So I will link his channel down below because he has read this book before. I think this may be his third time. And so he has so much more insight of what's going on. And so if you are interested in this book at all, I would definitely check out his channel. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I don't know if my cat's, Mayfair's sitting in the chair, but everybody else, I don't know if they showed themselves or not. I was wrapped up in that book. So anyway, I hope everybody's having a great day. Let me know if you have any thoughts on any of these things going on in the book, and or anything else you want to talk about. So thanks so much for watching. Bye.